Hello again, back again for part 3 of the disassembly of the T90A-1 transmission for a 1965 International Scout. For starting the assembly, I'll be removing the upper portion where the shift lever is attached, and this is referred to as the housing. It's held in place by 6 1.5-inch bolts. I've already started removing them. And next time I turn on the video again, you'll see that I've removed the housing, and there should be a gear shifter spring tensioner or spring directly underneath this housing here. So I'll see what that's all about when I get the plate off. Back at you later. With the bolts removed now, the shifter housing should lift up easily after breaking the seal and exposing the two shift forks underneath. And they just sit in there as so. It just pulls right out without any problem. To remove the main gear retainer, you first have to unloosen 3 socket head cap screws from the retainer, and I've already gone ahead and loosened them, so I'm just taking them off by hand. And from looking and inspecting them, looks like I might have to replace them. I don't know if I could work on those threads. For some reason they look in pretty rough shape. But anyhow, this should just slide right out, which it does, exposing the gasket, the felt seal that's next to the bearings, and there should be another in front of that, but I guess there isn't. So that looks like all there is to it, and I'll inspect that. Oh, also, just want to let you know, I did take a look at the gears in the housing. I did not see any broken teeth. I'm using a wire to support the main shaft, just so it doesn't drop down, and I have the gear set in reverse, resting in the back. So anyhow, the gears look good. There's some slight wear on the reverse gear, but other than that, everyone else looks pretty good. I'll have to decide whether I'm going to tear it down completely or just work on replacing these seals and gaskets here that I believe are the cause of the leak that I experienced earlier last summer. Once I'm done inspecting it further, I'll be back with you. As you can see, I've completed the assembly of the transmission mount, and it's temporarily just sitting on the cross member, waiting for me to clean the bolts and nuts that will hold it in place. And once that's completed, I'm going to move on over to the transmission that I'm working on, and basically I'm completing the inspection and the reassembly to reinstall back into the Scout. As you can see, I've already installed and completed the main drive retainer that's here, that sits on the main drive shaft, as well as there's a main drive gear behind this. It's pretty straightforward. There's an oil felt seal that slides over the shaft, sits behind this retainer. I have a paper gasket that I used gasket sealant with, just to make sure that I have a good tight oil leak resistant seal in there. I had to end up using different hex head screws that originally were with the transmission because the amount of wear that were on the threads. I wasn't able to get them at Napa. I was told they no longer stock these, but actually I got some nice chrome ones from a Harley Davidson dealer in town here that fits and went in perfectly. All of these were basically hand tightened to a torque range of between 12 to 15 foot-pounds, I'm guessing. That's what's recommended for this. You don't have to apply much to make sure that this is in place. After inspecting the gears and everything, the gears themselves were in pretty good shape. I did have some slight wear on some of the teeth for my, that's the reverse gear. I think they refer to that as the main drive bearing possibly. And I'm not going to really do anything else. I actually should, but I'm cutting corners, and hopefully I'm not making a mistake by not doing a total rebuild. But I just felt I didn't need it after inspecting the gears. They're all in pretty good shape. Once I have this in position and everything, and I've cleaned up the bolts that are used to hold. As you can see, I've moved the transmission from the workbench into the interior of the vehicle, getting ready to install it back onto the bell housing. I have a couple bolts that I'm using more or less as that I've cut the heads off of. I'm using as supports to hold the transmission while I guide the main gear shaft into the clutch. Also note that I've secured the drive shaft with a wire temporarily just to hold it in place, because if you aren't careful, the shaft will slide out of the rear of the transmission if you tilt it in the wrong direction. So next time you see me, the transmission hopefully will be in position and everything should be good to go. Oh, also, I've mounted the transmission mounts to the bottom of the transmission because two folds that will help support the transmission as I install it, and also it would be make it a lot easier to put it on before the transmission is in position. The transmission has been installed. The bolts from the transmission to bell housing have all been torqued to 55 foot-pounds. As you can see, everything is properly seated and sitting where they should be. The one takeaway from this whole thing that I learned along the way is obviously you have to make sure that the transmission and the engine bell housing are all in alignment, which means I had to raise my engine about, must have been about 1.5 inches, 2 inches higher than what I had it originally had it raised to. I had thought I had to take off my transmission mount in order to make it fit. I found that if it had been raised properly, everything would have just slidden right into place, which would have been nice. But it looks pretty nice. I'm excited. The brazing on the ear mount that had come off was fixed by a master mechanic welder down in Lancaster, Ohio, and did a great job. So I'm all excited. Can't wait to get the shifter housing back on, and then I'll tackle that transfer case, and that'll be my next set of videos. Thank you.